Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, our guest is Sepideh Yeganegi, and she's an associate professor in strategic management and a co-author of the book Spin Out Ventures. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Good. So tell us, in your book, the name of it is Spin Out Ventures. What's a spin out venture?
Yeah, spin-outs are independent businesses that are created by former employees of an existing organization that usually they leave their employment, leveraging some skills or knowledge or resources that they acquired during their employment. If I want to get an Zoom that we are using right now, it's an example of a spin-out.
Mm-hmm.
So the founder of the Zoom was an employee of Cisco WebEx.
Right.
He left and he attracted 40 employees of the WebEx with him. They left and they started this company, Zoom, which it's in a kind of like same area that they were working on the project before in WebEx Cisco.
Yeah.
So many companies that we see, they have founders that they have some kind of work experience. They work for another company. So this type of startups, this type of businesses, we call them spin-outs.
Gotcha. So, when entrepreneurs, lots of times people think that entrepreneurs kind of start out in their garage or, it's founded on a field or something like that. How does this kind of different, I guess, tell us the story. How is it? That again, everybody thinks that it's, kind of started in the garage, but it sounds like it's really not.
Yeah, you're so right. That's the popular romantic story of entrepreneurship that usually we hear in media. It's college dropouts that they left college and start the next unicorn in their garage. But the reality is most entrepreneurs, they start in another company. They start working for another organization. They acquired lots of experiences, knowing what's going on in that industry, developed their network, know who are the main stakeholders in this industry, and then they leave and start their own business. And because they have all this experience and they acquired and they inherit lots of knowledge and routines from their parent firm, so the success rate of entrepreneurship, like a startup that they start as a spin-outs, is higher than other type of startups. But when the stories in the media usually is just like this garage entrepreneurship. And to be honest, one of the reasons that we decide to write this book is just to provide a more realistic picture of entrepreneurship, because you hear, especially from like younger people, that they feel like, oh, after my college, if I don't want to go for work for another company, I prefer to start my own company. It's wasting my time to work for another company. But the reality is 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs, they have some kind of work experience when they start their own business. 70% of entrepreneurs, they find their business ideas while they were working for another company. So this is the reality. And I interviewed like 20 entrepreneurs for this book, and we wrote lots of cases that maybe one of the famous stories of garage entrepreneurship is Apple.
Right.
When we talk about Apple, it's just the first thing that comes to us is just like Apple was started in, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. They started Apple in their garage. But the part of the story that doesn't come to the media that much, and we don't hear that much about it, that there are interviews, actually, the Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple, that he talked about it, that like he was an employee of Hewlett Packard, HP at that time. And he was working on this idea of Apple computers while he was working for HP. And he presented that idea to HP, but HP at that time, they were working on they were in a different business. They were working on those advanced calculators and other business. They were not interested in those personal computers. So they rejected that idea. So he got the IP release and he left. And then they started to continue this project in their garage. But Steve Wozniak always is saying, like, the learning opportunity and the learning environment that I had in HP, it helped. So many of the stories that we hear, they are spin-outs. Like Chevrolet maybe is one of the older examples that the founder was part of General Motors. There was some strategic disagreement about the direction of the company. General Motors, the Chevrolet founder wants to focus on a smaller car market, while at that time, General Motors was focusing on different markets. So this strategic disagreement happened, and the founder of Chevrolet left, started their own company. But the interesting part is sometimes these spin-outs are really beneficial for parent firm. Like, for example, in this example of Chevrolet, at the end, Chevrolet was acquired in part of the General Motors. Again, it went back to the parent firm. So there are lots of benefits for entrepreneurs, for parent firm, and for the economy in general. Spin-outs venture, they create lots of clusters and agglomeration that we see. For example, Silicon Valley in California, one of the reason behind it, or there are lots of research that shows the one of the drivers of this cluster are spin-outs, because employees, they leave their parent firm, they create a business that most of the time is kind of like same industry, similar to their parent firm. And eventually we have these clusters of these tech companies that they benefit that community and everyone.
So, you're talking about that somebody's working for a company and they kind of gain some experience, some knowledge and things like that from the company that they're working for. Then they leave and they go start up their own company or spin off and go start their own company. What about trade secrets and different things like that it would sound like, hey, if I'm taking the idea that you had and I'm just tweaking a little bit, really I've taken into your intellectual property. How does that fall in with all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So most of the time, employees, they sign contracts that it's prevent them to take anything that it's belong to their parent firm, and like intellectual property rights, trade secrets. So they can't take the confidential information or anything that is patented or is they can, but they have to kind of like get the licensee or pay the parent firm to use those technology.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they are breaching their contract, or non-compete in many cases are common, but more and more those non-competes, like recently we saw FTC that they ban non-competes, but even though that the non-competes are banned, but still there are non-disclosure or non-solicitation to protect the parent firm resources. Like, for example, in non-solicitation, you can't take your parents' customers or employees. You can't, if employees, they just employees of the parent firm themselves decide to leave and join your spin-outs, that's fine. But you can't just go after them and encourage them to join you. That can put you at risk. The more friendly this relationship, it benefits for both parties. Yeah. But when we get to this hostility, it's having negative impact on both parent performance and spin-out performance. And especially spin-out performance, because your startup is a young company, not that much, like you don't have tons of resources at the start. And those hostility is time consuming. If you get to those legal procedures, and those are very expensive and time consuming. The priority is that you keep the relationship positive. And the parent firm, they sometimes they encourage even. When I was interviewing some of these entrepreneurs, in some cases, the employees, they come up with an idea that parent firm, they really don't want to exploit it because it's not in their core business, it's not in their core competency. So employees are open to the parent firm. And so if you don't want this idea, I would like to take it out. And most of the time, parent firm are supporting it because the commercial production of some sort of product, and the spin-outs wants to go to residential. So the founder of that spin-outs left, start her own company and became a customer of the parent firm for some parts. So they have a very kind of like beneficial relationship for both. The parent firm sent these employees to talk about the project. They went to talk to the client. The project seems okay, but parent firm said, like, for several reasons, I don't want to pursue this project. So the employees, they take the permission. They said, like, okay, if you don't want it, they left and start that one. And parent firm was happy because they were saying, like, if this client was kind of like a long-term client for us, we really want to help them, but at the same time, it's not at our best interest right now to take this project. But if you can take it, perfect. So there are lots of examples that the parent firm and employees, they can keep a good relationship, collaborative relationship, and which benefit both. And when we are talking about like the employees, they acquired knowledge, like lots of this knowledge is just industry knowledge. Is the parent firm, they can't kind of claim it, is something that anyone work in that industry, you can acquire that knowledge, or the routines, like even like how the parent firm, they run their business, they recruit their employees or negotiate their contracts. All this kind of knowledge is very beneficial for employees. It doesn't have to be necessarily trade secrets or intellectual property of the parent firm that they transfer to their spinouts. Even this kind of like how to run a business, how this industry works, customers, how you manage all this relationship is very beneficial for spinouts.
So for a spin out, what are some of the common mistakes that you see these spin out companies make when they first get started?
One of the worst things that you can do is just like, this relationship with the parent firms. And sometimes, although that most of the times they are in the same industry, they are in the same area, and all this knowledge and learning is helping them. But sometimes you have to unlearn some of those things. You have to differentiate yourself.
Right.
So you can't be kind of 100% like a copy of your parent firm. You still have to be different, which it help you to be kind of stand out by yourself in that industry and avoid parent hostility. If you target different customers, different market, or a different variation of the product, not the exact same one, those are the ones that are helpful for spin out. However, sometimes it's difficult for spin outs when they start and they kind of like try to replicate their best interest.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about also employees. I would think that sometimes depending the employees that go would certainly make the parent company a little upset, or, the company that you work for pretty upset, because if you're one of their main people and you take another person with you, then the parent company could say, hey, look, this is detrimental to my business. How would you advise somebody who's doing a spin out like that? How would you advise them to handle that type of situation?
Because the founder themselves, when they leave, the parent firm, they have to replace them. And
Right.
usually the spin-out founders are, research, it shows that they are hiring higher performing employees that usually
Right.
they need to start their own business. And that is one of the source of like a negative impact on the parent firm for a short run, because they have to replace this. And then if you try to attract more of the employees of the parent firm, that can put the parent firm at risk, or the clients. Like sometimes if you are working with big clients and now you want to take those clients, some clients, they are so big that they count a big percentage of the parent firm.
Right.
The advice is just like, you shouldn't, for example, in one of the cases that we were studying, the employees, when they were leaving, they were just handing in their new business card. And the parent firm, they could use this one against them because it shows that you are specifically soliciting the customers because you are encouraging them by handing them your new business card. The best advice is just like try not, and especially if you signed a non-solicitation agreement. But there are cases when employees themselves, like at Zoom, when they left 40 other employees of WebEx, not all at the same time, but eventually 40 employees of Zoom, they were former employees of WebEx. It is their choice. They leave and join a new startup. But actively soliciting the employees or the customer, especially if you have some contract that is prevent you to doing that, that can be a mistake.
Right. Now, in your research and your interviews and everything that you had for this book, I guess what was the one piece of advice or the one thing that you learned that you didn't know before that has really stuck with you since you've done that research?
Yeah, there is, for example, one is just when you sign your contract, you have to be kind of aware of what you were signing. Like one of the entrepreneurs that I was interviewing was saying, like, I was young and I didn't know even what I'm signing. I was just excited to get the job.
Right.
So I got the job, and now a few years later, I want to start my own business with my coworkers. We were a team that we want to kind of leave and start our own business, but then we realized we signed this and we are restricted at least for 1 year. So we left and we joined another company just to save enough money that we can just start our own business, and we wait for our non-compete contract to pass, and then we start our own business. So it's not the end of the world when you just sign something. In this case, they had to wait 1 year. But the second job that he started, all I wanted to do something that make money. I went to a sales that it was a big commission. And I knew when I want to start my own business, I have to have at least two salaries, one for myself, one for another employee that I can pay for the first year that you don't have enough sales, and it will take some time to get to the point that you can take some money out of your startups. It's important. The other advice, I think it's totally okay to go and work for another company. It's a great way to start your own business, because sometimes in class we teach entrepreneurship, and many students, they have this desire to become an entrepreneur, but they don't have great ideas. But at the same time, they feel like, okay, why I should go work for another company? I want to become an entrepreneur. But the entrepreneurship, it goes through this work experience, is help you. So especially those an entrepreneur, it's good when you take a job that you can kind of like work in different roles. You can see the whole picture. That is something that there is a debate that, like, is it better to work in a smaller company or big companies? Because smaller company, they provide you with this whole picture. Some of the interviews that I was doing, they were saying, like, I was sitting at the table and all the CEO and CFO and all these main players in this business, they were there, and I could see how they run this business and what are the challenges, which project is more profitable, which project you're just doing it because that doesn't make that much money. So they learn about all this. However, big companies are advantage too, because they have lots of resources, they spend lots of money on R&D, they explore lots of new ideas, which most of the time they can't exploit all those new ideas. Like, they have limited resources, they have a core business that they want to focus on that. So they create lots of opportunities for you. So these ideas that the company was spending resources exploring them, and now they can't exploit them. Sometimes that is a good advantage of working for big companies, that they are working on the cutting edge technologies and new ideas. So both have advantages, disadvantages, I guess.
Yeah, I could see where you could argue both sides of that, because there is. But I think for young entrepreneurs, people that are just coming out of college, because again, I'll say that I kind of got my experience before I started, but I think that there's a lot to be said with picking up that experience. Or if you're, they say that the best salespeople typically are the extroverts. Well, if you're not an extrovert, but you're going to try to launch a business, you need to be a salesperson. I mean, because somebody's got to sell, and typically it's hard to start something up and have a salesperson right along with you, because typically there's other things that you need first. I think, what you're saying is that get some experience before you kind of go out and do this. I mean, not saying that you can't jump out of college or trade school or whatever it is that you choose to do and become an entrepreneur right away. I think it definitely takes some time, and it's good to gain some knowledge. And then obviously the capital is extremely important whenever you start a business.
Yeah, and in that environment, you know yourself better. You know what is your strength, what is your weaknesses. As you're saying, if You think that you are not the best person for sales. That is another thing, that the work experience helping you to know other people. Like, although that we are saying like it's a risky thing that you bringing colleagues, but it's very common when people and one of the other reason that higher ranking employees are more likely to become an entrepreneur, they are in a position that they have access to all these human resources. They know who's best in what. And so when they want to put a team together, they know which of these co-workers can be a good candidate for their spin-outs. Obviously, you can't be good at everything, but you can find people that are good at those things and put a good team together, and that team will determine the success of your startup.
I think the more experience you get, the easier you're able to spot the talent that you need to help you with what you're doing. So, Sepideh, we went through a lot of stuff. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
Maybe like, what is the benefit in all this for the parent firm? You are losing your employees, and especially sometimes the good ones. Like, why parent firm? They shouldn't put all their resources to prevent all this spin-outs, right? But the reality is there are lots of benefits in spin-outs for parent firm too. I can just maybe mention quickly a few. For example, one that is corporate coherence. You create lots of ideas. You're just like your employees, they are working on all these great ideas, but you can't exploit all those. So what? Just let all those innovations and explore and ideas that you came up with go to waste and just like, or you can let your employees take this ideas out and exploit it outside. And there are some examples. For example, AstraZeneca, they take a very small, like 20% share, and they encourage employees to take some of these ideas. Most of the time, when you keep a good relationship, there's lots of spill back. So although the spin-outs, they take some knowledge from your firm, but they work on those knowledge, they create more knowledge. That knowledge can come back to your firm. And in some cases, you can acquire those firms. And those are a successful, like innovation that it was not in your area. You don't want to spend your resources to exploit them further. So your employees, they take it out, they work on it, became successful. Now you can go and acquire them. Right. And because there's lots of similarities in terms of the routine, in terms of the way that these employees, they learn things from you. So the companies are very similar. So there is a higher success rate of when you are acquiring these firms, because lots of times when you are acquire a firm, it's very hard to merge them together. But when you are acquiring your own spin out, is easier. And another way that spin outs helping parent firms is at the downsizing time. When the companies, for any reason, you have to downsize a division or close down some part of your business. So some of these employees now, you can help them to become an entrepreneur. This is what, for example, Nokia did when they were closing their lab. They let their employees to take one of the ideas that they were working on. They give them the IP release and they give them some money. So many of those ideas that the employees were exploring in that lab, Nokia let the employees take it out. So employees are happy. It's now, and it's just like, they were being laid off and looking for another job so they can start their own business. It was a great learning opportunity. And I was working on that business at this idea for so long. And I used lots of those ideas in my spin out. And obviously that funding that they provide them, that was helping too. So there are lots of benefits, or in some cases, spin-outs, they became either the customer or the supplier for the parent firm. So there are lots of benefits for the parent firm to encourage spin-outs.
Sure. If people want to learn more about your book and just about, spin out ventures themselves, how can they find this?
Yeah, like I think Amazon probably is the best website that they can find a book. And I think if they just search Spin Out Ventures, they will find this. The image behind me is the front cover of the book, Spin Out Venture, Transitioning from Employment to Entrepreneurs. That is, I think, the best place to find the book.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time today and definitely excited to learn more about Spin Out Ventures.
Thank you so much, Gary, for giving me this opportunity to talk about this topic.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
our guest this week was Sepideh Yeganegi, and she is associate professor in strategic management and a co-author of Spin Out Ventures. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.